Everybody, this is Jim Shelvy from NexCore, and today's a unique real conversation because it's the first real conversation that we've done with a full-time NexCore employee. So everybody probably already knows Taylor, but please introduce yourself. And this is where you look at the camera.
Okay, so that was a question that I asked him before. Do I look at you or do I look at the camera? So I'm Taylor. My last name is Miller. For those of you that don't know, I am your client communications manager here at NexCore, or as Anthony likes to call me, T-Money.
T-Money. We might need to edit out the...
I liked it.
I liked it too. All right, we'll keep it there. What do we call Anthony? Is he A-Money? I call him A-Train.
I was going to say, you and Kevin have nicknames for him. I just call him Anthony. Or actually, I call him the Magic.
Magic. All right, let's not talk about Anthony. We'll get deep in here. So, Taylor, it's interesting because you and I have a lot of history, right? For those of you that don't know, I am related to Taylor by marriage. So she is actually married to my nephew. And so we have a lot of history, but I was really taken back quite a bit when you shared some of your story with me, and there's going to be some of that I want to get into.
The childhood part, right?
Today, yeah. I mean, just like all of it. You're young, 22, right? But people that meet you or see your work ethic would never believe that you're 22. You have the work ethic of someone much more established, experienced, older, committed.
See, but I have a different take on that because I don't think that it's age that defines your work ethic. I think it's a mixture of your personality and then some of the things that you've been through, and by some of those things that you've been through will shape the goals that you have. And so I just don't think that it's based on age or even maturity. I really think it's just based on what is the goal that you have.
So what's the goal that you have?
I mean, it's an ever-changing goal, really. I've set out to be a homeowner, and in the next couple of months, I am going to sign on my first house.
Congratulations.
Thank you. For those of you that don't know, I live in Jefferson County, and I plan on staying there. So, so I'm signing a house there.
It's fair to say that everyone has preferences of where they wish to be, and that's okay.
Okay. So then, and I don't know, I've just always just had this, I want to work somewhere that makes me happy. I've never really been into one industry more than another. Even just growing up, I've just always done like side things to like make money and do stuff, but not to really just be like, oh, I only want to do this. So it just kind of, my goal today may be different than my goal tomorrow. So.
Sign of an entrepreneur.
Okay.
So let me sidestep a little bit and share some of the story. I'd like you from your perspective, and then I'll share mine. How you came to work at NexCore.
So my background is in optics or ophthalmology, just depending on which side of the spectrum I was on, or more so management, I guess. I don't know. So I would say that my first experience with NexCore really started when my husband came down here to help kind of like clear some of the stuff out and like work on the building as you guys were rehabbing. And I remember talking a little bit about what you guys' dream was for NexCore, and I was intrigued. It kind of set off a light bulb for me, like, this is different. I like it. And then just how quickly you guys were doing it, and just how, as the building progressed and how things progressed within the building, the bigger the dream got. And it latched onto something in my soul. Like, I don't know what it was, but I was just like, I'm going to work there. And prior to that, I was never really close with Lauren or Jim. I've been to their house. I knew them. But
you actually hit my house with a Ford Explorer.
Different perspectives. So,
okay.
So we were just never really close. But then you guys told me that you guys were looking for help one day and if I knew anybody. And I think at the time we were actually talking about Kate, which is my sister-in-law. If I thought maybe she would, be interested, and I think you guys have had separate conversations from there, but we talked about that a little bit. And I was like, well, why not me? And I was like, why can't I be there? And from there...
And you had a full-time job at the time.
Yes.
That you had just started, I think.
So it went from like one place to another very quickly. I had a very quick separation from a ophthalmology group in Chesterfield, and then I started another place. Literally, probably because even then I was doing side stuff here, just like just being here like every Friday in the afternoons when I got off a little earlier than the rest of the week. So I was doing that for a little bit, and then I just kind of quickly was like, the more I was here, the more I was like, I have to be here. I have to be in this building all the time.
All right, so I have to interrupt you because, she badgered the ever-loving snot out of me. And here's how it really went down. So I love your perspective, but now we're going to infuse a little truth into it. So how it went down was we were looking for someone to help out with some basic things, probably a couple hours a week. And a lot of it was social media related. And Taylor said, I'll do it. And I'll do it full time. And I said, well, no, you don't understand. We don't have the budget to bring you on full time. And she goes, yeah, but I'm going to work full time anyway. I'll just do it after I work my regular full time job. Mm-hmm. So she attempted for $75, $100 a week is what we had in our budget. She attempted to give us a full 60 hours a week. And it was crazy. She would leave her other job, she would come here, she'd be working at home, she'd be doing all kinds of other things, and it got almost to a point where it was ridiculous. And I'm like, you have to stop working. You're working too much. And so an opportunity presented itself to bring Taylor on in a part-time capacity that was like a 20 or 30 hour a week commitment, and she brazenly and confidently said, I will be full-time, and I will be full-time soon. So about 60 days later, she came on board full-time, but your job description has morphed quite a bit.
And even to piggyback off that, I don't even think it was 60 days. I literally, from the point that they gave me this inch of an opportunity, I just went full force. I was like, no, this is not happening. I was like, I will be here if it's gonna be the end of me. So I was working essentially 2 full-time jobs. It was crazy. And so I think that, and then that's when the bugging started, was when I was like, man, I'm working a lot. I was working a lot, and I was just literally every time that one of us got on the phone to talk about something, whether it was Lauren, whether it was Larry, whether it was Jim, literally, or anytime I was in this building, I was like, man, I should just be here full time. And it always ended, every conversation ended, no matter what it was about, it always ended with, I should be your full-time employee. And here I am.
Yes.
And now
so it was more often than that, by the way. It was belligerent. But you almost got fired.
By Lauren.
Right. So, funny story. Lauren, and I'm so throwing her under the bus. So, I might be staying at A-Train's house tonight. So, here's what happened. So, Taylor comes in, and Taylor's a bit of an acquired taste. Because she will get in your face. If you tell Taylor you're going to have something, we were supposed to start filming, 45 minutes ago. And so I'm over at another one of our buildings. I'm over at NexCore Fitness. And I look out the door and I see. So she's unrelenting in. And
then he walked back over, and then I started following him around NexCore. And then at one point he was in a conference room, and Anthony can attest to this because his office is right across from the conference room. And I literally was pacing outside of the conference assistant's room door.
You were.
And I was like, I walked into Anthony's and I was like, I'm being so rude right now, but I don't even care. He needs to start filming.
Right. So what was really great about it, I'd like if you could just take the next 4.5 hours and describe how your job has changed since you started working here. We probably still don't have enough time. But you came in here and you were going to do some of our social media postings, and we realized that you have a weakness.
Grammar.
And spelling. Grammar.
Commas, anything really.
Right. So, but what began to happen is it was like, okay, well why are these this or why are they that? And Lauren said, well, I don't really understand what Taylor does day in and day out. And I said, you should work with Taylor a couple of times and you'll understand where Taylor's value is. So, which I'm going to talk about in just a minute. And it was funny because Lauren wasn't committed to firing you, but she was committed that we probably needed to fire you because she didn't understand what you did. And the real challenge, and this is
I think the real conversation that probably happened is I don't want to be not necessarily the bad guy to fire her or the reason that we fire her, because I like her and I don't, and because Lauren is probably one of the sweetest people I've ever met.
Are we firing Lauren? Is that what we just decided?
No.
Okay, go ahead.
No, but it turned into like I just don't see the value because the job that I had wasn't what I was necessarily good at. So,
yeah,
now you can continue.
Well, no, and I think that's a huge lesson. So a lot of why we do these interviews is to get to know the person, because everybody talks to you and they don't really know who you are, but a couple people know how you are, and that's pretty amazing. But as a business owner, I will tell you that I've been in situations and I've done consulting where I went out to other companies that have problems, and it's almost never the employee that is the problem. It's that the employee was put in the wrong role. And that was the challenge with Taylor, is that we put her in a role that wasn't her lane, it wasn't her groove. And so she started really functioning a lot, and this is, all kidding aside, she really became my right-hand person. Not really my assistant, because that's not the right term for it, like my partner in crime a little bit, to hold me accountable. And she flourished. And then she took over our virtual solutions division. And then she morphed into the social media scheduling and management and some of those things. None of the writing of the content, because that would not be good. But Lauren had a chance to work with her. And one day, it was a cool moment for me, because I really, like, my people, the people that I work with, are so important to me. And our three main full-time NexCore employees, you, Anthony, Kevin, like, this place would sink without you. You guys are absolutely amazing. But for me, like, I need the validation of, that was the right person. Because we brought in some people that were not the right people. But I'll never forget, Lauren came to me one day, I'm sitting with Larry, and she goes, I get it. I go, what do you get? She goes, I get Taylor. And I said, what do you mean? She goes, NexCore doesn't work without Taylor. And it was like a proud moment for me, because like you were my pick, right? Like you were my draft pick. But like, you're so committed. And
I think we talked about this at one point too, even before I was hired, was like, I don't do anything half-butted. And I'm sure the rest of you will understand what that phrase is supposed to actually go. But it's literally like, I don't do anything half-hearted. I either give 300% and am literally running myself ragged and like all over all the time, or I'm not doing it. Because I will never be that person to walk in and just be like, I'll do it. And he can attest to, I've done things that I don't want to do, and he's heard about it every step of the way.
There's a lot of truth there. But you are super committed. You shared with me that one of your goals is to run a NexCore location someday, somewhere. Mm-hmm. And, for me, that's a huge thing, because, NexCore, there's something unique here, and I don't want this to be about NexCore as a company, but like there's a buy-in that the co-working members have, that the employees have, that this is just something different. And one of the hardest things to do is to get an employee that will treat your business like their business. And we have 3 of them, right? Like, you treat it like your business. You work all hours of the night. Kevin does that. Anthony does that. I mean, it's crazy what we've been able to get here, but it's unusual at your age to have that. So now I want to step back into who you are. And I asked if anything was off limits, and you said no. So I'm going to get right into it. You've had a rough life to get to where you are. And I don't know how deep you want to go, but I'd love for you to breeze over the top of it and just like start when you were young and work your way up. No names if you don't want to, names if you do.
Okay.
But
so breezing is hard, but we'll try. Okay. So I don't really know where I'm supposed to start. So I'm just trying to think of where to start. So you said I didn't grow up well, or I've had it rough. There's 2 sides to that. So money-wise, I never grew up rough. I always had what I wanted when I wanted it. I always never wanted for anything, really. I just always had it. Like, I grew up so I was born in Texas, but I think would really like to say that I grew up in Arizona, Prescott, Arizona. Shout out Denise. And so... And
Larry?
He was in Prescott?
He was in Arizona. It's all the same.
No. So it turned into, like, I lived in a mountain gated community. I lived in like a 3-story home, not including the basement. I had my own balcony. I don't know how many kids can say that. Like, I had my own balcony.
Right.
And my mom was a stay-at-home wife and mom, and so that was what we did. But my dad...
This was your stepdad or real dad?
So my real father, my father was not, in the picture. Pretty much since when he found out my mom got pregnant. He literally told my mom he wanted nothing to do with me. So then that's when she met my adopted dad, who I call my dad, because I don't even know the name of the person that actually was, made me. So then there was a guy who my mom met, and then they fell in love and flourished, and, part of me, she said that she didn't get together with him because of the money. And then the other part of me, looking back, doesn't necessarily believe that. And that's no shade to my mom whatsoever. Everybody has this, I need to make sure that I do what I gotta do to take care of me and my own, which would at that point be me and my sisters. And so I feel like there is that trade-off of I need to be taken care of.
How many sisters do you have?
So I have 2 younger sisters, and then I have 1 half older sister.
Okay.
But I don't really talk to her, so it's just kind of, yeah. So then I also have brothers. So then, but my brothers at that point were older and kind of just out of the picture. They had dads that were involved, and they were kind of in and out. So it's just kind of one of those. But my sisters were really the 2 that, even as they got older and my mom and dad got divorced and my mom had to go to work, I really took these 2 in, and I was I'm going to make sure they're taken care of. But there was just a point in my life where I remember both physical and emotional abuse. And that physical abuse either came from watching my friends in my surroundings be hurt, or I was molested. I was molested for all my life up until about 13, going on 14 that year, when things came to light and my mom found out and we moved. So...
Now, can I interrupt for just a second? Because a lot of people hear something like that, and there's different emotions that come up. But this was a very serious situation to the point where that man is in prison, not jail, prison, correct?
So he's in prison, but it wasn't for the molestation.
Okay.
He's in prison because of drugs.
Gotcha.
So, which was his defense in all of this. Because for a while, he actually wasn't in jail or prison, whatever. And he literally was like contacting me and was like trying to justify why he did what he did. You know,
When's the last time you had any contact?
before he went to jail, probably when I was 16. Yeah, 16.
So would you, today, with all that's happened, I mean, is he still your dad, or is he not your dad, or how do you view him?
So unfortunately, it is just kind of one of those, like, I do see him as my father because he was, as much as the things that he did to me was not right, he did provide a home. He did teach me other life skills, and just, you know, he was still there. And as much as that doesn't excuse what he did by any means, I have a dad. Like, it's just one of those, he was there. You know?
Get it?
So, and that's a hard pill for people to swallow too. People don't understand why I still recognize him, even as a human being. Because a lot of people go through things like that and like immediately, like almost like how people who sexually assault others turn them into objects to, in their mind, justify what they do. They turn their abuser into an object. They're no longer a person to me. They're just my abuser. Like, they're what happened to me. And I don't want to live my life that way. Because that's the same thing as, like, you have to forgive and forget kind of mindset. You have to then, like, objectifying the person who abused you almost, like, is like I get that it's a coping mechanism, but it's also a way to, like, be stuck on it. Because you're like, that happened to me. So, it also happened to my little sister. And I feel like that is the thing that to this day still sometimes gets me when I tell stories, is because of the fact that my little sister also went through this, and it had, like, as much as they tell you, like, if nothing happened, it's your fault, you know, this, that, and the other, but if I would have spoken up, it wouldn't have happened to her. That's how my mom found out about it, was because he tried to touch her inappropriately, and she went to my mom. But because I kept quiet, and even though knowing it was wrong, and that it was happening, and it shouldn't be happening, I still let it happen for so long that he thought it was okay. And to this day, I don't even know how many people came forward after the fact, like when it came to light, because he also did this to foster children that were in our home.
All right. So what happened was we were in the middle of filming, and you just saw it. It was like we were really getting into the emotion, and then we ran out of storage space. So we had to dump that. We thought it was a great time to take a break, and we came back caffeinated. So we're gonna jump right back into this. And Taylor, I want to say I appreciate you being so transparent about your story, because I imagine somebody that sees this is going through what you went through. They're going through that right now. So I'd like to take a pause and just maybe you can say something to them about, like, maybe give them a little bit of the strength to stand up and say something when you couldn't.
So just be first and foremost honest with yourself in just saying, you know, it's happening. You know, don't try to block it out. Don't try to just ignore it. It's happening, or it already happened. And I think the big thing then going forward is, how do you want to handle it? How do you want to deal with it? Because unfortunately, and as much as people try to tell you, you know, you should come forward, you should bring that person to light, you know, that kind of thing. If it's not right for you, it's not right for you. And I think that that's what everybody, both people who have gone through this, who are going through this, or people who, you know, haven't gone through it and are just trying to help you, like, cope with it. You know, it's a big step to admit to somebody else, whether it be confidentially or whether you're going to report that person, that happened to you. because then you're not just outing the other person that did that to you, you're outing yourself. So I always like to say, think about how you want to handle things first, and if you're really ready to take that step. But I always encourage everybody, if there is something that that you're going through, just let it out, and whether that's to yourself alone in your room, whether that's to a trusted family member or someone in your life, just know that like people are going to be there to hear you and help you walk through that path whenever you're ready for it. But know that you have to be ready to take that step, because that's a big thing. And then I guess that then would segue back to, at one point in time, I thought I was going to have to look my own father in the face and testify against him in court.
Wow.
And I think that's when I really knew that, you have to be ready to take that step. And unfortunately, I don't necessarily think I didn't come forward because I wasn't ready or because I didn't want to deal with it or whatever my thought process was. For literally as long as I can remember, all the way back to like 5, maybe 6, all the way to literally like, when we left at 13, 14-ish. And I, just have to say like, I didn't get that choice to say that I willingly wanted to come forward. It was just kind of like I was put into that position. And then same thing with possibly having to testify against him in court. Like, that's another thing. You don't always get to make that decision. You have to do it sometimes. And that's why I really think it's important. If you're not ready to come forth and tell your story, then you're not ready. And you're not going to do anybody a service by then putting him on blast or her on blast. Because it could happen to guys too. So.
For sure. So I'm caught up.
Okay.
At this point. And so the story behind the story was, I've heard to this point. And we were sitting in a conference room here at NexCore talking. I basically said, what's your story? And you started talking and you got to this point. And I said, okay, stop. Someone needs to hear that, not just me. And when we got ready to do this, Anthony made a comment is like when we were in between shooting here just a second ago and said, did you know all this? And I said, yeah, but this is all I know. And you said, but you don't know everything. So now I want to hear the rest. I want to hear your perspective on what the rest is. And I don't know if it's related to what you just talked about or if there's more to the story, but I want to turn it over to you and have you share whatever you want to share from here.
Gotcha. So then I think before we got caught up, we just talked about, we got to the point of foster kids were coming in and out of our home and this was happening to them. And then,
Did you know that at the time? That was happening to them?
No.
Okay.
Because that's the other thing, is that as much as, and I'm gonna throw this out there, it was almost like when it was happening, it became personal. Like I was going through this, and the things that he said was I was the only one going through this. And I guess in my head I was trying to say, well, it's just me, so it doesn't matter if I come forward because it's just happening to me. I don't want to deal with what would happen if I came forward. Because in the back of your head you have to think there's other people around me. And I think that's where I've always been a little mature in my sense, where I've always, even at 10, 11, 12, I was thinking about if I said something, how does that impact my sisters? How does that impact my mom? How does that impact the boys and girls that are coming through my house and are getting a chance to be out of a disgusting environment that they're in? And I always had that in the back of my head of what are the consequences to the people around me just because I want this to end?
Well,
and it's a reality. And
it's a harsh reality for a 10, 11, 12-year-old girl to have to shoulder that burden.
And that's just where people then say, that's where it's not your fault. You had to do what's best for you kind of thing comes in. And it's just kind of it may not have been my fault that he did that. but it's always going to be a little bit of my fault because when it was happening to only me, I didn't say something. And then it happened to others because I didn't say something. And then people have tried to tell me, oh, that's your survivor's guilt. And, oh, I hate that word. I hate that word so much, survivor. And I know we've had this discussion too where I've said, you know, I hate the word survivor. I hate the word victim. I hate all of those types of words because I feel like everybody goes through something in life. You know, everybody gets a hand that they didn't want. Some got it worse than others. Others got it easier. Others created it for themselves. But I really think that everybody goes through something, and you know, it's just how you handle it and how you walk, how you continue to go through your life with it. So that's why I don't like being called a survivor. Like, you survived that moment. Like, that was not a moment, and I will continue for the rest of my life dealing with those things. Like, every time I look at my sister, there will always be a part of me that knows that it happened to her because I didn't say something. And that's probably why, and I mean, I love both of my sisters and I love my brothers and everything, but I will probably always have that special spot in my heart for my youngest sister, Felissa, and why I'm always going to be just a little more protective of her because I'm the reason that she had to go through that experience.
So I'm not a psychologist, and you know, it's not my place to say no, that's not accurate or all those things, but it's interesting the take that you have, because a lot of people would embrace some of those words that you are pushing back against,
and they do,
and justify shortcomings or circumstances because of that. And I'm not saying that's right or wrong. I'm just saying it's interesting that you so aggressively say, no, I'm not, mm-hmm. and have forged this path. So, anything else that you want to share?
And I just think that then it goes into the rest of my life of what happens after. Because I did mention the fact that I talked about I would have possibly had to testify against, at that point, the only father that I've ever known in my life. You know, and it turns into a big thing. You know, how does a 14-year-old have to get up into a stand in front of an entire courtroom, possibly have this in newspapers and aired other places, that a 14-year-old had to look the only father she's ever known in her face and say, yes, he molested me. Some of the more intimate memories I will ever have for the rest of my life were the moments that me and my only father were alone in his room at night. So, it's a lot.
So, how did that, and it's powerful things that you're saying, right? And I don't want to dismiss any of those because they're so powerful that I fear that it could take over the rest of what we talk about. And I don't want something that you so clearly push to not define this time that we have. But I have one or two more questions about that, if it's okay.
Yeah.
So how did that fast forward?
Okay.
You said you left.
Mm-hmm.
Your mom left, took you, your sisters, and left. Where did you go?
So we came back here.
To St. Louis.
Yes.
Okay.
So my mom was here, and my aunt, who is actually no longer with us, she lived here at the time, and you know, so we just kind of ended up here. And then my mom found another significant other of, not again, no shade, but a few significant others in that time that we've been back. You know,
hashtag.
You know, but like have had, you know, different, you know, partners and things like that. So it's really kept us here because we have family in other states too, so we could have gone anywhere.
Right.
But my aunt, who's no longer with us, is really the reason we came back here. And then just her partners have then kept us here, and then at that point we were all old enough and it just didn't make sense to leave, that kind of thing. So that's what got me back into St. Louis. And I mean, I'm not opposed to leaving St. Louis because I have lived in other places, and I think that it's interesting to get the experiences that other places would then give you. But, you know, I do love St. Louis.
So you're going to help us pick where we open the next NexCore so you can determine where you go.
well, I don't necessarily know. And we've talked about this a little bit, and my thought pattern was, you guys will have to leave first. So you guys as co-owners would have to leave first and really make those decisions, because as much as we love to talk about how I run this like it would be my own business, and hopefully it will be one day, at this point, and I don't know when, but if ever, but I would ever have like a financial stake like the three of you do. So the three of you would then make those decisions, and I'm just here to help support and run the places that you need help running.
Awesome. I love your attitude. How did you, so you come back to St. Louis, you're 14, so you're high school age.
Yes.
At this point. So what was high school like in St. Louis as a replanted transplant coming to St. Louis? Or had you lived in St. Louis at all at that point? Mm-hmm. So you came here at 14. Yeah. Okay? Yes. So how was high school?
It was fine. I went to Festus. For those of you who don't know, it's not necessarily St. Louis, it's Jefferson County. But, everybody that's not from St. Louis just thinks everywhere in Missouri is St. Louis. That's not Kansas City. It's one or the other.
Right.
So, but so it literally just turned into like, but essentially I live in Festus. I went to high school there. I played softball for a very short period of time. I, tried to get into different like clubs and stuff like that. I did theater for a short time. I was on a debate team. I went pretty far there.
You don't say.
But that's fair. So then coming back, and then I turned 16. And that's when I really was able to go out and get a job. And at that point, that was my number one priority, was a job. Like my mom can attest to multiple days where I would call her and be like, you gotta let me leave school. The opening manager at Fazoli's, the only fast food job I've ever had, thankfully, was at Fazoli's, and the opening manager called me and her cook didn't show up, so now they have nobody there and it's just her and she needs to prep all this food and da-da-da-da. And so I would leave school to go to work, like literally. And like to the point of like the school was
I think that's illegal, by the way. Like I think it's like part of the child labor requirements is they can't have you work during school hours. But
yeah, it's fine. It's fine. Cause then and then in junior and senior year, because at that point I was still at the end of my sophomore year when this was happening. So then my junior and senior year I was in a program that allowed me to leave school early. But I knew that going into high school. Because even through being a young child and like getting older and going through middle school and into high school, I always did side things to like make money. Don't smile like that. So then I did side things.
Elaborate a little bit. What type of side things? What were your hustles? What were your gigs?
So I always primarily did childcare. That was always something I did on the weekends. I actually watched a little boy with autism. So I did that. I did like yard work in the summertime. I did, what else? And I just did house cleanings. Oh, that was a big one. So my mom actually worked for a property management company that's not in NexCore. So she started off as their like cleaning lady and rose up from there. But I would help her on the weekends go and clean out homes that people had moved out of or people who were getting ready to move into. And she paid me part of what she got paid because I was helping. So it in turn did that. Even when I lived in Arizona, my mom worked for a camp there. It was like a resort kind of camp, more upscale-y camp that like upper middle class, primarily white families, I won't even go there, but primarily white families would come and let their kids stay in the mountains, essentially, with the lodges and a big cafeteria. And so I would go and I would help clean the, places that the kids just stayed in, or I would help my mom in the office there, or, just do stuff. So she was constantly giving me part of her salary. So, yeah, I was just a worker. And so then when I got into junior and senior year, I went into a program that allowed me to leave school early. So then knowing that I wanted to do that, I had to double a lot of my classes in my freshman and sophomore year. So then I was free enough in my curriculum to allow that. So.
Gotcha. So what drives you to work that hard? Can you pinpoint it?
I guess there's a couple of different things. The first one is I feel like you really have to be born like that, as bad as it is to say. There's this calling in me. Like, some people know that they want to start families, and some people know that they want to be in hair and design, and some people know that they just want to, do like labor jobs, like, construction. That's the word I was looking for. But I just always known that I was going to find a company that just treated me good, and I was going to rise. And that would have been my thing. And I said that, and I just never had like a specific thing that I ever really felt called to do, as long as I was, making money and, could support a way that I wanted to live, whether it was just buying candy at the gas station when my mom said no, and I was like, oh, well, I have my own money, so I'm going to do that. And or if it was I wanted to buy a car so I could have a way to drive around, or if it was to do anything. Right. I just knew that was that. I think back behind that would have been my mom depended on somebody to take care of her and her children. And I don't think I ever want to be stuck in that position where I have to depend on somebody. I want to be able to do it myself. And then I think probably the third and most important is I just want to work. I've always had that, just like, I'm going to work and I'm going to do what it takes to get a job done. Like, people have needs. How can I help people fulfill those needs? Which I think is another reason why I've never really had like a strong calling to do one thing, because I just want to help somebody else.
I just tried to count in my head how many things you do at NexCore, and I just stopped counting at like 20 something. As you were saying, so you are extremely versatile. Have you always been this competitive?
Mm-hmm. So at Fazoli's, whenever there was like a cook, so there's like different parts of Fazoli's. There's like what they call a front of house and a back of house associate. And then even though you're a front of house associate, you still have to do the drive-through and the like cleaning, like the dishes and stuff.
Right.
Well, I always had this streak of like, well, I want to do kitchen, so I'm going to learn how to do kitchen better than anybody else in this place, including the manager, and I'm going to do it better than them, so they have to put me in the kitchen. And then I did the same thing with the front of house, and I did the same thing with the drive-through and dishes. And so because I never wanted to be told that I had to work in one position. So I always used to do the thing with the cooks where like we would set up the steam table for all the pastas, and like we would race to see who could get their side done faster, or like the floors at night when you had to like mop and squeegee the floors all down. We would be like the front of house, and the drive-through person would do their competition, like, okay, who could squeegee faster, and like, so I've just always been like that. I don't know. I feel like it's just a part of the personality.
I think so. I see that in you. So I want to wrap up. I wish we had another hour to give this conversation. So I think we need to do like a part 2 and a part 3 of Who is Taylor. But I'd like you spoke to the camera once, and you spoke about, when it's time to stand up or when it's time to speak up. But I want to end this on something completely different. And I want to give you the floor. I want to give you an opportunity to speak to other young ladies that are out there. Because everybody that ever encounters you, and this has been my experience, they're like, she's how old? She what? And you take such ownership, and you're so passionate about what you do that I think you're inspirational to some people, and I think you're going to inspire a whole new crop, a whole new group of people when they see this, and they know your story and what you've gone through. So this also is unrehearsed. So I hope you have something profound to say, but I would love for you to speak to the young ladies that are out there that are, trying to find their passion, to chase their dreams or do the things that they do, and maybe they already work somewhere full-time that isn't what they want, and you've shown that it's possible to attack what you want and own it. So I'd like you to speak to the ladies, young ladies specifically, and just give them your message of how to keep chasing your dreams, even in the midst of the adversity that you've gone through. And then when we're done, we'll be done. Thanks for taking some time out to talk with us.
Well, thank you for letting me be the first featured staff member, so that's exciting. And I'm definitely ready to sit down and talk, either to you or to anybody that's out there that wants to talk about, sexual abuse, or anything else that's maybe happening or has happened to you. I am also just willing to sit down and talk about anything. I'm a pretty open book, whether it's about literally anything, so I'm ready. But for anybody that's out there that has a dream, no matter what that dream is, or even those who say you're a little lost, I would definitely say that I think what's really important is understanding you as a person first. What drives you, what motivates you, even if you don't have a specific dream, what keeps you going when you're faced with a hard time, even if it's just schoolwork, even if it's a bad day at work. What's the thing that at the end of the day you're like, man, I'm glad I got this accomplished? And I think that'll really say a lot about you. And I think that you just need to really dive into those things, and then I think you'll find your dream or your aspiration from there. And then the last thing that I would definitely say is, just sometimes you just have to walk away from a situation. And sometimes you really have to put yourself outside of a comfort zone, or just literally be willing to handle anything that comes your way. Because if you don't do it, life's going to do it to you. And I would definitely just think that if you ever need somebody to lean on, find those close people in your life, or if you don't currently have those people, NexCore is awesome for that. But even if you're not a NexCore member and you see this, just know that you can call NexCore, ask for me, and I'm happy to talk anytime.
If you don't do it, life's going to do it to you. I love that. Thank you. That was amazing. Amazing. Guys, thanks for watching so much. Taylor Miller, our very first featured employee that we've done, and there will be more. You got to learn the whole staff. They're a little bit crazy, a little bit fun. Some of them are a little bit rude. But at the end of the day, we're all passionate about what we do, and we're excited to have you watch. Thanks.